Hi, my name is Sheila Rai, and I'm part of the curriculum team at American Reading Company, and I'm very excited to show you some of the materials you're going to be using. A little bit about myself. I was a first, second, and third grade teacher in Brooklyn, New York, and I had the chance of using some of the ARC products in my classroom. I then became an ARC coach, and now I'm part of the curriculum team. And I can't wait to show you what you're about to use. So let's jump in to our first box, which says Open Me First. And you've probably already opened it since you got to me, but you started with this welcome letter. And I just want to mention this letter has lots of useful information for you, but it also has a link to a site that will show you all our curriculum in more detail because you only got one part of our curriculum. So I invite you to take a look whenever you have an opportunity. Next, you'll see a scope and sequence for your year. And this scope and sequence gives you an example of the 4 thematic units in ARC Core. Each of the 4 thematic units incorporates rigorous tasks and rigorous texts that culminate in a writing project that combines reading and writing expertise and content area research. Each unit includes high-quality, multicultural, grade-level text and a diverse leveled library pulling from every publisher in the country to ensure that every student sees herself and her community in what she reads. So taking a look at the scope and sequence, ideally you would start with Unit 1 where we build those routines and we build that culture of reading and writing and build your classroom community. Then you move on to Unit 2, which is informational reading, writing, and research in science topics. Then Unit 3, literature reading, writing, and analysis in a literary genre. And then end with an argument unit with research in a social studies topic. Now, based on what you're currently doing right now in your classroom and the standards you're working on, we have you in Unit 3, and that's the lessons you're going to sample. So let's dig into these boxes to see what we have. We have the ERLA. We have the Foundational Skills Toolkit for your small group intervention. And let me go ahead and unpack these boxes, and I'm going to be careful to try to save them because when I finish, we're going to pack up these boxes again and return them. And in those bigger boxes, you would have found your ARC Core instructional framework, a 3rd grade core text sample, a 3rd grade independent reading sample, and some white bins, which you can use to attractively display your books. So I've unpacked the materials, and what I did with the independent books is I put them into the 3 white bins, and I actually sorted them using the stickers on the spine. And if you look on the front of your ERLA, it will tell you which grade levels they correspond to. And I put them into below grade level, on grade level, and above grade level. Now, ordinarily in the ARC Core, you would get a wide spectrum of baskets that really fit the needs of the students in front of you. We took a guess as to where students would be approximately at this point in the year in 3rd grade. I also took out the core texts and put them aside because I know I'll be using them with my students. And next, what I'd like to do is get into the framework, which will tell you what you'll be doing every day. This ARC Core framework is for our literature genre lab, and the genre you'll be studying is traditional tales with world cultures. And in our frameworks, we always begin by explaining the why. So you'll see some of the why of the best practices we incorporate, as well as some articles that you can read if you have the time. I highly suggest you do that. And then we have an introduction, and I'm going to take you to page 21 of that introduction, which lays out the pacing guide. You'll notice that through the 9 weeks, we're working up Bloom's taxonomy, beginning by defining the genre, then spending time analyzing the genre, and then ending with creating in the genre, where students will have lots of fun writing their own traditional tales. For the purpose of this trial, we would like you to start in week 2, because those standards that we address in week 2 will most likely match what you're working on around standard 2 messages in the text. So I'm going to turn, looking at the tabs, to week 2. And they're going to use story elements to delve into what are the messages in the theme. Let's take a look at week 2, day 1, where you'll be beginning. And that's when you start with theme/message. You will be needing a graphic organizer for this lesson, and it is provided for you at the very front of the lesson. And every lesson follows the same structure, where we begin by introducing the focus of the lesson, as well as the standards that align with that focus. And as you go into the day, you'll see that there are 3 portions to this day, and where you are within the day is highlighted in gray. Another thing you might want to note about how this framework works is there's a white portion which will tell you what to do, and then the gray sidebar will give you some information on the why and the how of the lesson. The first portion of the day is the read, write, discuss complex text, and you'll begin with a mini lesson around theme and message and how that relates to story elements in the genre. And then you'll select a text to read with your class to apply that mini lesson. In your core text, since you're also working on poetry, you'll find that the first text is a poem. These are all Cinderella stories from around the world. And the first text is a poem titled If the Shoe Fits. That might be a good text for you to use to introduce this genre study to your students and tie it into what you're already doing. After you finish reading text together, students will then write about it in a write to text. And I do want to mention that we do have ELL supports throughout the framework. So take a look at those. If you have students who are ELL students, you might want to incorporate this into your lesson. Next, we move into Reader's Workshop. Students have had an opportunity to practice that focus standard with you in the whole group and write to it, and now they'll apply it to their independent texts. So this is where those independent libraries will come into play. Students will self-select a traditional tale of their choice, and as they're reading, you will be doing some formative assessment to check for understanding and meet students where they are. Then you'll end with an accountable talk, and this is a chance to embed some of those social and emotional health aspects where we invite students to collaborate with each other, talking in pairs and sharing with the group, really building an opportunity to build a community. And after Reader's Workshop, we move into writing. And students will write about what they just read about. And as they're writing independently, you're going to be, again, doing some formative assessment. And then they'll end with some collaborative writing and peer review. And that wraps up the structure of day 1. And then you'll move into day 2, which delves into the protagonist and how that applies to theme and message. As we look at day 2, I'm not going to take you through the entire content of the lesson. I just want you to notice how it again starts with the focus, highlights the aspects of the day, and follows the same format. You're just going to be choosing a different text, highlighting a different graphic organizer, and students are going to be working on theme as it relates to the protagonist. And you end with that writing. We invite you through this trial to work through as much as week 2 as you'd like to, walking through characters and theme. Now that you've seen what grade level instruction looks like with grade level text at the center of every lesson, let's talk about how we personalize learning for every reader. First, I want to bring to your attention the ERLA toolkits. We have toolkits for every level. However, we've given you a sample for a 2-read level because we thought you might have some readers that fit into this category where they're working on chunking flexibly, taking a look at a word and figuring out how to read it when it comes to those irregular words that we see in English. Like all our other frameworks, the toolkit begins with some introduction pages that give you the why, the theory of action behind this lesson. I'm going to take you to lesson 1, which was the lesson I'd like you to sample out with your students. Here's lesson 1, which I suggest you try out with a group of students, and it's all about flexible decoding. And on the page you see is all the teacher directions for you, and if you turn it around, it's a student-facing page. So imagine a small group in front of me. The students are seeing this page while I'm looking at the lesson, and what the students are seeing is right in front of me as well. Now, I do suggest that you do try this out with a small group of 1 to 3 students because research does show that any larger of a group has the same effect size as teaching the whole group. And as I look through the lesson, it's going to give me strategies of what to teach my students. And then it's going to take me to a text so that students can actually apply what they're learning to authentic text. So next we are going to look at the IRLA. The IRLA, together with the toolkits, is our proven intervention system. And what the IRLA does is it really personalizes learning for every student. In a full year of ARC Core, teachers use the IRLA to find every student's level, and that level will tell the teacher what each student can do and what they need to learn next. The teacher then pulls out the toolkit to teach the lessons. Teachers often tell us that the IRLA takes the mystery out of teaching reading. For this trial, we don't recommend using the IRLA with your whole class. However, you might want to try picking one student whose reading feels a little bit like a mystery to you. Let's take a quick look in the IRLA to see what you'd be doing with that one student. The beginning pages of the IRLA provide you a bit of that research on the why of what's behind each of the color levels. And there's some pages on how to use the IRLA, which is where we'll stop. Roman numeral pages 8 and 9 tell you how to level a student. And you can simply follow that process to find the level of that student that you select. On your review site, you have access to all the toolkits for all the levels. So once you find a student's level, you might want to try a toolkit lesson with them. You can also see videos of teachers using the IRLA and the toolkits. That wraps up what you're getting and gives you a little insight on what you're doing. I want to give you a gentle reminder to pack up your materials in those boxes when you're finished. And I really want to thank you for being part of this trial. We really hope that you and your students have a lot of fun and are inspired by our unit.